welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. As you guys can see, it is another Farabaugh Friday. No Alan Saunders today, but of course that means we got my man Nick Farabaugh joining us. How we doing, Nick?
Yeah, guys, we're doing well. I always appreciate having a Friday with Smitty, of course. We talking ball. Alan gets the day off. Fresh off his positive DMV experience today, according
Those don't
to
exist.
my
So, I
sources.
mean, yeah, I don't know
I,
how he pulled that one off.
I haven't been there in 2 years. I'm happy to have that be true. Um, the only issue is last time I went, I forgot to update my license photo. So it's still like my first photo from when I first got my license. So I
Mm.
look like this, and it's like 16-year-old me still on that. So that is an anecdote, and I look young as heck on that photo. So I'm like surprised every time like I have to go on a flight, and I go obviously since when I go to road games, I fly enough. Like
Mhm.
every time I have to go on a flight, I'm always surprised, when the like security guards are like looking to make sure it's you. I'm always surprised I never get like double takes. Like I'm real, dude.
Right.
They're like, "Oh, it's you." I guess I look still alike, so at least that's good. At least that's good.
There you
I
go.
I don't know, but I'm ready to talk ball if you are, because
It
I think this is
is.
a fun week.
It is, and it is December 1st, which means it's time to unleash hell, not only on Steelers Afternoon Drive, but also for the Pittsburgh Steelers, unleashing hell in December. And they got some reinforcements on the way. Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to play on Sunday for the first time since getting injured against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nick, they've missed him. Maybe not as much as, Trenton Thompson obviously has done a great job filling in there admirably. You had Keanu Neal there before he got hurt as well. But obviously, when you're talking about a player of Minkah Fitzpatrick caliber, his absence has been noticeable, and they've missed him on the back end of things. How much could his presence back on Sunday change things? We've gotten a lot of questions this week about Trenton Thompson and wanting to keep him in the fold. I actually think this is a really good week for that to continue to happen, just because, you got a player in Trey McBride on the other side who's been an emerging tight end, and Trenton Thompson, the way that he could potentially match up with him and still be utilized in the game plan here. But how much of a difference maker is Minkah Fitzpatrick being back on Sunday?
I think it's huge for them. Obviously, I think they've gotten some nice play from KZ and Trenton Thompson, but I will say the one thing I am worried about is we haven't really seen them face a real offense, is what I'll say. DTR was
Yeah.
definitely babied in his first kind of week of prep, quick game, play up. It wasn't a lot of, okay, I have to worry about the deep pass. I have to worry about this. Um, and more importantly, Browning was just, they tried to do stuff with Jake Browning and he just wasn't very good.
Hmm.
So like honestly, they shouldn't have had 10 points. Like a couple of lucky bounces in that game. Like the Bengals could have easily lost that game by 3 touchdowns if the picks are made and none of the Jamar Chase kind of makes his freak plays and all that. But to me, like I'm just a little bit. It's a good defense. I'm just not convinced that what we've seen the past 2 weeks, where we have seen great defense, is necessarily where this group is just yet. So I think Minka is like an addition they needed because he allows them to do so much more on the back end. I mean, they like didn't baby Trenton Thompson, they didn't baby Michael Walker, they didn't baby Landon Roberts. Like they
Right.
made him do everything. Trenton Thompson played all over the football field. But I was talking with the Landon Roberts today, and I like getting insight from E Rob because he gives me points that I didn't think of. And I kind of asked him just about like what Minka means, and like he was like, we were disguising without Minka, but
Hmm.
everything was being over communicated, right? It was like they found their groove with communication, but it was because they over communicated. Because they over communicated, quarterbacks, receivers, and all these other guys were tipped off at blitzes and disguises. So they're really, even though there was disguising and rotations, it wasn't like a true disguise rotation because the communication gave it away. Of like, okay, you got to do this, this, this. They'll communicate with Minka, but it's much more subtle. And so I think they're going to truly be able to disguise things, round coverages up. Like it's a good point. I didn't really think of with Minka coming
Hmm.
back, and I also just think they're going to be able to do different things with Minka because I think KZ has kind of proven himself to be better in that free safety role. Now, that's not to say that Minka doesn't go back there. He obviously will, but I think they played KZ too much down close to the box whenever Minkah was there and Keanu Neal was there. I thought he was better. I think Casey's almost better the further away he is from the line of scrimmage, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not that he can't make tackles in space. He can, but he's kind of a good last line of defense, a good space coverer. Like, he's not good in the slot man. That's not really where you want KZ. So I feel like he's better almost back there. I think Trent Thompson, meanwhile, is great up in the box. So is Minkah. So I think you can do a lot of different things with that. I think Minkah has a great shot to get a pick in this game. I really do. I think it's a really I think Kyler sometimes put the ball in harm's way, and I think
Hmm.
Minkah's gonna be able to do some different things disguise-wise. They're gonna be able to do different things coverage-wise. The other thing we haven't really seen is what does this defense look like with Pat Pete in that slot dime back role with Minkah in there? Because that has been a recent development for Pat Pete where he has truly embraced the slot role. And so what does that look like with Minkah in there? And I think it's going to be interesting. So I think they can go really hyper versatile with their back end stuff. And I think it'll be really cool to see kind of where it goes because while they can obviously do great against quarterbacks that are either getting, having the game plan cut for simplicity's sake or just quarterbacks who aren't very good, the last quarterback they faced that didn't have that happen was Jordan Love. And Jordan Love had some big time success against the secondary at times, despite throwing some picks. So I don't want to see I want to see where those issues that they faced before that Green Bay game kind of come up. Are they going to give up conversions on 3rd and 10 plus? Like that was a big issue for them
Hmm.
before that game, but they haven't really been tested in that area much. So where does that stand, and kind of how do they can they stop explosive plays? Because this team will test them with that. I think it's just a really good litmus test to see where this defense is in terms of the explosives. Because I think the moment they get rid of the explosive play, along with the turnovers and all that, I think they go from a good to a great defense. In the last 2 weeks, they've been a great defense, but let's see it against a quarterback that could sling that thing all over the field.
Right, and I think that's fair. So basically, what we're getting at here is they've answered the test. They've passed the test with flying colors defensively the last couple weeks, but it hasn't been that hard of a test. So now, against a quarterback that offers a little bit more, how will they fare? Let's stick on the defensive side of things and dive a little bit into this. Let's just take a quick look here at the Arizona injury report with some guys that are going to be out. Michael Wilson on the offensive side, Hollywood Brown, even despite not practicing, their coach, Jonathan Gannon, said he's trending in the right direction. Now, is he just saying that? Is that lip service? Could he actually play this week without practicing? I don't know what Jonathan Gannon's tendencies or roles on that have been. Obviously, just a first-year head coach there, so I don't know if anybody has played after being a DNP all week. Trey McBride, who I brought up, has been a limited participant. He's listed as questionable. And that's it on the offensive side of the ball. But okay, so let's say best case scenario for them here that we know Michael Wilson, who's already been rolled out, isn't going to play. But say Hollywood Brown does play, say Trey McBride does play. How do you feel like those guys match up with the Steelers defense? I brought up Trenton Thompson potentially being a little bit of a neutralizer for Trey McBride there, but man, Hollywood Brown can fly. We talked about the explosive plays that can be had. You would think that he is culprit number one and who you're circling on that Arizona offense.
Yeah, this is what's a little worrying for me about this Arizona offense is I don't think the receiving core is great, but they're athletic. And I think that's an issue for a defense that on the back end is not super athletic. But this is why I think Trenton Thompson is going to be a nice add to the three safety package because he is athletic. So get
Mm-hmm.
a little more speed on there. But when you don't have speed on the outside of JPJ, I think there's questions to be had when you face Hollywood, Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch. That's going to be their top three. It's going to be Moore, Dortch, and Hollywood. I think
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood will play. He did the same thing last week, basically. So he's not
Oh, did
100%
he didn't
though.
play the entire week or didn't
He
practice the
he
entire week?
practiced Wednesday limitedly, didn't
Hmm.
practice the next 2
Okay.
days and then played. But he didn't look 100% at all. And the stat line will say 6 for 88, but a lot of that production was pretty empty production. So he didn't look 100%. So I don't know if we're getting the same, Hollywood Brown that you expect. It's an athletic group. I think McBride's a really athletic move tight end that is tough to cover in space. He's like a Luke Musgrave type that they faced when the
Mm-hmm.
Packers came to town, where he does a lot of things vertically. He'll run seams, he'll run corners, he'll run sevens, he'll run posts. I think that's one of the big worries I have about this game is McBride against Roberts and Walker. Like, I think that's a significant worry because of how much they push the ball vertically to the tight end position, and McBride's really good at it. He's a really solid, underrated tight end in the league to me. And if he's healthy enough, he can cook them a little bit. Like, Musgrave got him a few times in that game. Njoku had a nice game too. If he had cut the ball, he would have had a better game in that game. But like, tight ends haven't really been an issue for them too much this year for the Steelers. But I do wonder if a guy like McBride can give them a little bit of trouble. So it's not saying that it will. I think it's just a little bit more of an unknown. Like, we don't know what Michael Walker looks like running down the field with tight ends yet. Rob, that's not really his main thing, but I think he can do it at least serviceably, or just kind of how they respond to that. But what they've really done really well, I like what Drew Petzing, the OC for them, has done and some of the schematic stuff. He's been getting Dortch lined up inside against some of these safeties, and Dortch is 5'7", and he getting him lined up man to man with like Trenton Thompson or KZ. That could be trouble to me. I think that they just have some athleticism that gives them a little bit of trouble. And Dortch is having a nice last 2 weeks, caught a touchdown last week. I think he's gotten like 18 targets. Rondale, I think, is just a really good yak guy. I think the big thing is they just have to tackle. I really do. Because what they're going to try to do is hit you underneath with the quick stuff and then go over the top. Kyler will rip it. I think literally specifically, Jonathan Gannon was asked what he wants to see from Kyler this week, and he said, I want to see him rip it. Like, I think they're going to go vertically. They're going to try and get those explosive plays. We've seen guys like Jordan Love, who has that gunslinger rip it mentality. Yeah, he had 2 picks against the Steelers, but he also was able to get some big plays down the football
Yeah, he was
field.
good, I thought.
Like guys like Jaden Reed are tough stylistic matchups for him. Guys like Tank Dell that have had bigger games against them. They're tough stylistic matchups for the Steelers just because of their quickness and their explosiveness in and out of breaks. So Hollywood, I'm not sure. I think Dortch is like a sleeper like problem in this game. I think like, I'm not saying they would be better off with Wilson playing, but like Dortch being this kind of shifty slot guy that can really hit a gas out of a break, like I think it's a little bit of a problem if you get him aligned to the trip side, the most inside of the trip side on the 3x1. So I think it can be a little bit of a trouble for them. McBride, I think, is a problem. And then we haven't even talked about James Conner. I think that
That's
is
where I was going
obviously,
next.
yeah, I think that's problem number one. I think James Conner is problem number one because this is a good run game. This run game has been like the one consistent thing they've had all year, whether that has been with Josh Dobbs and also Connor working, and even when Connor went out, they were solid. Now Connor's back and Kyler's there, and that's, I think, the other thing is they can let Kyler run. Kyler can jailbreak things. He can get out of the pocket. He can make things happen when things aren't there. He can slip tackles, so you don't want to blitz, or you want to make sure you contain on the blitz. You don't want to let him go. So there's trouble in the run game. They got to make sure they contain Kyler scrambling. Kyler's designed runs could be trouble. And then I think James Conner in general is just one of the harder runners they faced all year. He just runs so hard, and he is hard to tackle. Guys like Derrick Henry they have faced where they have had some trouble tackling Derrick Henry at times. Now they minimized him, but you remember back early in the season when they faced, for example, Nick Chubb. That's like the ultimate tough to tackle guy, right? Chubb was just getting 6-7, boom, boom, boom. McCaffrey was getting 6-7, boom, boom, boom. Now they've been an elite run defense since Cam came back. So this is like a good test for them. Like, let's see where the run defense is at with Cam and all of those guys. I think the run defense should be fine because I just think with Rob playing more, like it's like, okay, a big boost to the run game, but it's going to be a good run game. And it's a little different than kind of anything they faced. I was a little surprised the Browns didn't use DTR's legs more when they faced in that game. So I'm kind of interested to see where Kyler's legs go. He's a very interesting player. But they could probably get the Steelers a little over aggressive off the edge, and Connor can bust one for a big gain from that. So I'm a little worried about this matchup. It's not like a great Cardinals O line. Paris Johnson's playing better, but they're missing Elijah Wilkerson. They're starting left guard. It's a fine line. It's not an elite line. The Steelers defense definitely has the advantage there, but I do think the secondary with the athleticism can be at risk for allowing those explosive plays. So yeah, they're 2-10, but like it's a team that has a good bit of talent, and Kyler now is in week 4 back. So like
Yeah.
this should be the week where he starts to hit his stride a little bit. I don't know if he will, but like you even look back to last week's game where they faced the Rams, and you're like, oh, it's 37-14. I mean, they were leading after the first quarter. The game kind of got away from them after that. But like, let's talk about what's happened since Kyler's come back. I mean, they beat the Falcons. The Falcons are leading the NFC South right now. Like they played the Texans tough. Like it's a team that can be blown out, but it's also a team that's played a lot of good teams tough. They played the Ravens extremely tough. Like it is a team that has played a lot of really good teams tough. They beat the Cowboys. Like they are not to be slept on. I mean, they're not a good football team, but they have ingredients to exploit matchups, and it's mainly because of their offense. Their offense is explosive if it wants to be, and they can get a run game going. So the Steelers better be on alert, I think, defensively. We'll talk about their offense. I think the Steelers' offense will be fine in this one, but the defense
Mhm.
better be on alert. I think this is a good test. And with Kyler back for week 4 now, it's possible Kyler has a kind of explode moment. Like he's kind of due for a game where he just goes off, you would expect. And Steelers can't let it be against them. They can't.
Yeah, if you look at the Arizona Cardinals numbers on the surface here, the only thing that they are above league average in 10th in the NFL is their rushing yards per game, 10th. Um, so yeah, their rushing attack has certainly been there on offense. Everything else, they are at least at best league average or worse. That's offensively and defensively. What do you think though in terms of the blueprint, right? Because like the Steelers who have had success against Lamar Jackson, for example, a mobile quarterback, could that translate to this matchup against Kyler Murray? What types of similarities, what types of differences do you see between the two that could or could not prove beneficial in terms of having a blueprint?
Yeah, they're vastly different players. I think that's the interesting thing is, yeah, they both run and both mobile, but Kyler's a little different. Lamar's turned himself into a pretty solid pocket passer and like very underratedly doing that.
Yeah.
Kyler's never really been that. I mean, Kyler can win from the pocket, but he's been more of like a dude you have to worry about jailbreaking and kind of getting out of things. I think Lamar's a smoother processor. Like Kyler puts the ball in danger a lot more, but he also has a lot of reward for that. I also think Kyler as a scrambler is like more instinctive. And what I mean by that is it's not that Lamar is undoubtedly the best scrambler in the league, right? Like he's just tough when you get him in the open field. But like I think Kyler has a great instinct of like, okay, step up, go through this hole. Okay, here's when the blitz is gonna come. Like, this is how I escape here. This is how I can extend the play. Like, I just think Kyler's so good at extending the play. Like he's so instinctive in the pocket and the pocket movement he can make. So I think that's a little different. I think Kyler's size makes a big difference too. Like that's probably why Kyler doesn't stand in the pocket a lot. Like he is small and it's
Yeah.
hard to see for those guys. And so he'll change his launch point. He'll move. They love to run bootlegs with him. Like Lamar does a lot of traditional drop back passing stuff, while Lamar also does some bootleg stuff, but Kyler does a way more bootleg stuff. So they're different players stylistically. Kyler's more of a gunslinger. He likes to let it rip more. I don't know if it's the same blueprint. I think you can do some similar things, like you can run hard off the edge, but with Kyler, he's so instinctive in the pocket and how to move. I think sometimes, when you talk about like Lamar, right? I think one thing that you can criticize at Lamar's game is he's got good pocket movement, but I think sometimes he doesn't feel rushers off his backside, and that's why he gets
Mhm.
stripped enough, on those sacks sometimes. Like Lamar definitely has some of those things, but Kyler doesn't as much because he's just so shifty and moves a little differently. Both great players. I think Kyler's a little different, definitely more turnover prone, probably more of an extender chaos agent than Lamar is. Both very dangerous in the open field, though. Both very tough to bring down, and both throw great deep balls and have great arm talent. So both tough. And so I think the Steelers can definitely take some things from that. But I do think Pat Pete said today, Kyler's like a one of a kind, unique quarterback, and I do agree with that. I just don't think there's really a guy. Remember when he was coming out of Oklahoma, everyone was like, "There's really no one to compare Kyler to," and I still don't think we've seen anyone
Yeah.
since really compared to him. He's a pretty unique football player.
Nick, I want to flip the script now and talk about the Steelers offense. 4 straight games over 150 rushing yards. They look to make it 5 against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday, who have not been good against the run. I mentioned that they are pretty much bottom of the barrel on everything except for running the ball on offense. Rushing yards, 30th out of 32 in the NFL, allowing over 140 yards per game. 31st in points given up at 26.8. 32nd, dead last in terms of third down percentage allowed. So it's not good, across the board for the Arizona Cardinals defense. Is this finally the opportunity here for the Steelers offense to not only run the ball, but maybe to expand upon that and also have a little bit of a passing attack going with this rushing game?
Yeah, I think that's the natural leap, right? Is where's the play action game going? You got to get more than just a bootleg game going off that. Where's the middle of the field stuff outside of seam routes? Like, can they hit the digs? Can you hit the glances? Can you hit the slants? I think that's the next logical step. I've heard that from multiple guys in the locker room too. They view that as the next step. So I think it's coming. I think that's coming. I think that's the next step they're going to do. It's in the playbook. I know it is. They just didn't run it. I know it's in the playbook. I also think that's going to be new for Kenny. I don't think he's done a lot of it in the NFL. He did enough of it at Pitt, but it's going to be a little new for him there. So that's the next logical step. But the next logical step for them, to me, outside of just that schematically, is really fixing quarterback wide receiver details. Like, this is why I think the big underrated part of the run game's evolution. Like, yes, they had a huge evolution schematically. Like, they are one of the most diverse, multiple run game in the NFL to me. Like, they are a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Matt Canada conglomeration, and it's like a thing of beauty. Like, it is I don't know. That's like how you have to describe it. Like, it is such a diverse run game, and it makes them one of the more cutting edge run games in the NFL. But their details in that run game are so good. The landmarks, the angles, like everything, the timing, it is so perfect, their run game right now with the details. I just think it's not there yet with the pass game. And I don't think we've seen that yet. And so I feel like, to me, when we are talking about run game, I want to see the pass game get the same thing. I want to see the timing on routes. We started to see Kenny throw with some anticipation against the Bengals. Like, I want to see him be sure, throw with some anticipation. I want to see all the receivers know when that ball is going to hit them, which shoulder, how to attack, which leverage, which coverage. Like, all of this. I think that needs to be the next step. And I think that will help them in the red zone. I think that's the big thing right now in the red zone.
Yeah.
Is that's really hurting them, because they had a few big time, to me, misses in the red zone against the Bengals. Obviously, one of them should have been a touchdown, so that one doesn't really count to me. But maybe DJ holds on to that ball. But I could think of that out route to Diontae that probably should have been, it was on time, but DJ kind of swerves it back inside a little bit, and it draws him back to the corner. Like, I feel like there were a few missed opportunities in that area. So I think that's the next kind of step. I think this is a good game to get that going. This is not a good Cardinals defense. As we have mentioned, they are without their 2 starting corners. They're without their best linebacker. Kazir White is on IR. Like, their front is not anything to write home about at all. I mean, we're talking about a starting group that runs out Jonathan Ledbetter, Roy Lopez, Kevin Strong, Zaven Collins has not been that good. Dennis Gardeck, like, it is a pretty mid group out there. Now, there are some like interesting names. Like, I like Dante Stills, a West Virginia guy. He's played well in a rotational role for them, but it's not really a special group. They do run a 5-man front, which is different. It's unique. It's a very different type of style that the Steelers haven't really seen. So that'll present them a little bit more challenges, because you're facing different surfaces in the run game. So I think that kind of gives you different things and different looks. So we'll see how they respond to that. But like, the safeties play 20 yards off. They play deep. So these safeties are deep, trying to take away those deep balls. So Kenny's probably going to have a few, open kind of windows down the sideline in those areas. Like this to me is a big George Pickens game. He should have a big game if they use him right. Diontae should have a big game. That's how they win. This is not a Pat Fryermuth game. They really try and kind of flood the middle of the field and try to take away those tight ends. I think they're third. I think they've only allowed the third most yards to tight ends this year. Like it is not a
Hmm.
productive game for your tight end if you are facing them. So I think this is a game where the objective is like three things. Keep running the football because it's a bad run defense. I like what they
Mhm.
do schematically because you don't really know which safety is ever going to fill or which side the fit's going to be through, and then they do a lot of stunts up front with this 5-man front, and so it allows their linebackers to come through. But the personnel sucks, so you should beat them. And then I think you got to hit on these throws down the field because they are open. And then three is just like anywhere Buda Baker is, don't throw it. Like, do not throw it anywhere near where Buda Baker is. I think the one thing about these corners that I'll say it's a young group, even without Starling Thomas and Antonio Hamilton. I like Kytrell Clark, but he's a young guy. Garrett Williams, young guy. Marco Wilson's been really bad this year. But you look at, Buda Baker, Jaylen Thompson, Kytrell Clark, Marco Wilson, Garrett Williams. These all five guys are ball hawks. Like they are ball
Mhm.
hawks. Do not drop the football and let it go up in the air. Tip drill picks will happen in this game. You put a ball in harm's way, it will be picked. Like it is a good group of ball hawks this week they're facing. So like to me, I'll make another prediction. I think Kenny Pickett throws a pick in this game. I really do. I think this is the week he does, and
Streak
it might
comes
not
to an
even be on
end.
him. Like it might be just a ball goes off the hands of so and lands in Buda Baker's lap. Like that is something they do really well. They're just really good at ball searching. It's a ball hawking secondary, and these safeties are really good ball hawks. And so I think it's going to be an interesting game in that regard. It's going to be a fun game, but those guys on the back end can get beat. You could separate against them. You can make big plays against them, but they make big plays too. So watch out.
Yeah, I mean, again, we didn't mention a ton of household names on that defense. The one that you did bring up there towards the end, Buda Baker. Obviously, you got to be aware of where he is at all times, and that's going to be on Kenny Pickett. Pre-snap identifying that. But yeah, if you were making a prediction, not only for the game, we're going to get into some questions here as well, but maybe somebody on offense like that stands out. You mentioned it could be a George Pickens game, so maybe that's your answer to this. Who on offense do you think is the one guy that if you're circling, like this is his type of game?
I think it's Pickens. It has to be him. They don't have anyone to match his physicality, his size, his speed. They're probably going to try and double him and put Buda over there. So maybe the answer is Diontae. Because again, no one to match up with him either. Like one of these
Yeah.
guys is going to go off, I think. Maybe both of them. So I think
Well,
it's going to be
Pickens, if you looked at the last 5 games, right? I mean, I know he scored a touchdown against Jacksonville, but that was his only catch in that game. So 1 for 22, 2 for -1, 3 for 45, 4 for 38, 3 for 58. So he's kind of due for one, I feel like.
he is, man. He's due and he's kind of just been taking it like they are really going at him. And he's just been kind of taking it in stride. Like, credit to him after all that people have kind of hit him with. But like you look at last week and like Puka and Cup didn't do anything. So they
Hmm.
might just sell out there, but the run game could cook.
Yeah,
Like the Rams had
Kyron
over 200
Williams.
yards against them on a
Yeah.
run. This is definitely a Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris game too. I think they get over 400 yards again in this one, which would like freeze the earth over. But I think they will. I think the run game is going to be good. But if we're talking passing game, I think it's going to be a GP game. I just really like what he does. And Kenny like throws a good deep ball, and that's what they kind of have struggles with. I mean, you look at guys that have gone off against, this Cardinals defense, like Tank Dell absolutely went off a few weeks ago. And Pat Fryermuth like has a chance to have a game where it's like 2 catches for 10 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like that's what they
Hmm.
do with all these tight ends is they take them away down the field, but they allow a lot of touchdowns to tight ends. And so I'm kind of interested to see how that goes. But you talk about really what happens in this game, and it's going to be all right. Can you take care of the football? The last 2 weeks, they have 3 picks combined. Those 2 picks kept the Cardinals in the game. Or sorry, no, Stroud threw 3 picks in that game, so they have 4 picks, I think, over the past 2 weeks. So like that's what kept them in the game. Like, don't turn the
Mhm.
ball over, and you're usually pretty good in terms of being able to win these games. So I really think that's the big thing. Kyler will give you chances too, and I think that's going to be the
Yeah.
big thing. But it's a group, man, that fights tough. But if you take care of the football and play well, I think the game should be won pretty easily. But I also think there's chances where this can go awry pretty easily for the Steelers.
Yeah. Let's get a couple questions before we get out of here and also make our final predictions before we do so. Fast Freddy, switching up. We're going to the defensive side of the ball. To this point, has Larry Ogunjobi lived up to the contract he signed this offseason in your mind?
Yeah, tough question because Larry hasn't really done much. Played his best game of the year against the Bengals to me. He was all everywhere, but I've been calling for it where he needs to play less snaps. Like this is not a guy that plays 50 snaps a game, which he's been doing. This is a guy that should be playing 30 snaps a game. I think he played like 32 against the Bengals and he looked great. Obviously, they only played like 43, but like that's where he should be regardless. He is an energizer bunny that is hot and cold. I don't think he's met up to the contract yet, just because I don't think they've gotten much out of him. I think that's been the issue. He hasn't really done much. It's not that he's been bad. I just don't think he's done anything really of note outside of that. So he's just been okay. So right now, I would say no, but it's not because Larry hasn't been bad. Larry's been a very serviceable player. I think part of it, though, is that they're overusing him.
Yeah, I agree. I just also think like you look at the other talent that they have on that defensive front, he's always going to get overshadowed. Like, I mean, you could say that with the other talent that is there, the opportunity should be higher for him to be able to make plays. You said the Cincinnati game was his best game. I that's interesting. I actually thought he was really good. Was a week 2 Monday Night Football against Cleveland, which is interesting. 2 of his former teams there. But yeah, so we got that one. Mitch Wolf here. This is interesting because all right, Frank Reich recently fired by the Carolina Panthers. He also mentioned he even openly said that this might be his last stop on his football journey. But Mitch wants to know what we think about the idea of him for OC slash QB coach slash offensive assistant, some capacity on the Steelers staff next season.
Cool with him being an offensive assistant. I'm not like super up with the idea of him being an OC. Like I just think we have too much data against it at this point. Like he did a great job with the Eagles. There's no doubt. I think he did a fantastic job with them. But you also have to
Mm-hmm.
consider who was there with him, who was supplementing him when they went to the Super Bowl. It was Doug Peterson. Like that's a really good offense coordinator in mind. So I think Reich did a nice job as a quarterbacks coach and as an offensive assistant that pitched it. So like assistant role, I'm good with. Like that sounds awesome to me. But does he want to do that at this point after being a head coach 2
Right.
times?
That's
Like if
yeah.
he does, if he wants to be like a senior offensive assistant, I think it'd be a wonderful ad. I think he could be
Why don't they have one already, Nick?
I think they kind of do. I just don't think he's a senior assistant. I think it's Glenn Thomas, who's kind of helping
Okay,
them.
that's fair.
But I don't
Because Alan and I have been talking about like why wasn't and if it's Glenn Thomas, okay, but like you look at why wasn't somebody brought in? I'm not saying it specifically had to be Byron Leftwich or anything like that, but like the offensive version of what they had in Brian Flores last season. Like
they should have one on offense and defense every year to me. Like
yeah,
I would like take the dude that Alabama and Georgia are gonna take and put him on like make it Steelers rehabilitation program instead of Georgia or Alabama rehabilitation program. Like that's
yeah,
what they should be doing. Like those guys will be there for 1 year. Like it's fine. I don't care if you have those guys on your roster for 1 year. They're gonna help you for that 1 year. Like Frank Reich
hmm
will probably be a senior offensive assistant for them for 1 year and get an OC job. Like that's fine. I don't believe in him as a true play caller to work around the strengths of his guys quite yet. I don't believe in him as being that guy, especially with what they need. I think they need I think they need kind of a guy that runs more modern concepts. They don't have to come from the Shanahan tree, but they have to be on the cutting edge of things in the passing game. I think that's going to be the big thing. And I think Reich's fine schematically, but he has some shortcomings that I think hurt him, but I love him as a quarterback developer. I really think he's better than people think. Bryce Young, I understand, hasn't looked great, but I think we have seen him as a quarterback's coach slash assistant be able to get the best out of guys like Carson Wentz,
Hmm.
and others. So I am personally on board with him being a senior offensive assistant. Could be the guy in the booth looking at the challenges. I think for Mike Tomlin, I think that's someone he would trust too, because former head coach would understand the challenges, all of that. I think that could kill two birds with one stone. So I'm cool with him coming on as like a senior offensive assistant if he wants to. But it's a question of if he wants to.
Right. They need to be, whether, I mean, I would think would be as the next offensive coordinator, but whether it's in that role or like we're saying, adding somebody else to the offensive staff in that type of role, you got to get more, you got to get a voice here of somebody that has developed a quarterback, because, what are we doing with Kenny next year otherwise? Like, whether it's OC, whether it's a senior offensive assistant, you need somebody that at the NFL level has developed a quarterback, in my mind. So if that's Frank Reich, so be it. If it's somebody else, so be it. But I think we're talking about the next logical steps for the offense being, the passing game and feeding off of that run game, building a passing game off it. The next steps for the Steelers as an organization, I think, is bringing in somebody to help Kenny Pickett, because we're 2 years into this thing already, and we're not where we should be with him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they need to bring in someone to help Kenny get going. Like that, maybe they need to have a guy that is like just a proven guy. Like, okay, that senior offensive assistant could be essentially QB guru. Could be Pep
Mhm.
Hamilton. Like, I think that could be a good hire.
Oh,
That's a guy.
yes. Just
Like
talked
Pep
about him
Hamilton's
yesterday
like
too.
a honestly, Pep Hamilton's like a low key pretty good OC candidate. So
Mhm.
I mean, that's cool to me. Pep Hamilton, like, I think that would be a good hire for them. But if he's not OC, like, I think senior offensive assistant would be awesome there. So, like, I think they need someone to help Kenny just be Kenny. Like, and Sully might listen, Sully, irrespective of what Canada was doing, if he is a guy that can connect with that OC, maybe Sullivan just is that guy. Because honestly, I mean, Kenny looked like a different dude last week. And
Mhm.
obviously, Sullivan seemingly called the plays that Kenny likes and knew what Kenny liked. So, like, maybe Sullivan is that guy. I don't know, but I think there are some interesting names out there that you can look at. Pep Hamilton, Frank Reich. If we're talking about OC candidates, Gerard Johnson's interesting to me.
Yep.
I think there's just a number of guys. Daryl Bevel. Like, I think there's a number of guys that
Clint
are very
Kubiak.
yeah, there are a number of guys that are very intriguing to me as
Mhm.
like QB developers. If you want to even if Tom wants to go with like an older guy that has tons of experience and is like shown capabilities with quarterbacks before, like Jim Caldwell is a fine hire too.
Yeah. I would agree with that. All right, Nick, a lot of good stuff in this one. Of course, we got to give real quick our predictions for this game before we get out of here.
Yeah, you guys, I don't want to predict them to lose, but like I could see it happening. Like I told Smitty before we came on here, like to me, yeah, they could lose to the Colts, but that this 4-game stretch, like this is the game that is like queasy enough to me where it's like, okay, I see it like, okay, everyone's talking about how they're going to be 9-4, but they're probably facing the best quarterback they'll face in that stretch. It's an explosive offense with athletes, and it's a ball hawk secondary where if one of those bad luck things goes against them, like it could be pretty bad for them. I think the Steelers win. I just think that man, I just can't pick the Cardinals to win because the Cardinals' run defense is so bad and they are so beat up. And the front should be able to get to Kyler. Kyler takes a lot of sacks. Like that is something too. And Kyler
Mhm.
should make at least one or two mistakes that gets him kind of in deep water. So even if something goes against the Steelers where Kenny throws a pick, I think the Steelers defense should be able to get one back for him. So I do think the Cardinals cover though. I think they're going to cover this 5.5 spread. I think I'm actually going to go interesting thing here. I'm going to go with something we haven't seen happen. The Steelers offense wins it for them. I think the defense might struggle a little bit, and the Steelers' offense is the ones that power them to victory. bold prediction with that, I think the Steelers win 27-24.
Ooh, okay. So we're the same on the Steelers number, but I agree on the Steelers winning. I think they cover though. I got 27-20 Steelers. You said somebody gets in there. Oh, you said Minkah, right? You
Yeah, I
think
think
Minkah gets an
Minkah gets a
interception this one?
pick.
Okay.
That's my call on that. I think the pick.
You know what? I'm going to say just because it's Cardinals. He's made an Instagram post. He's talked about it a lot. I think Pete gets one.
Oh goodness,
And then imagine, yeah,
that could be something. Pat Pete gets that pick with, especially with his past comments on Kyler.
right.
To like that could be something that'd be interesting. I think I'll lay it out for you. I think they're going to get over 400 yards for the second straight week. I think that Kenny's going to have a pretty good game. I think the pick has a chance to just be one that like ricochets off someone's hands or is batted at the line, like someone just grabs it. I think that's possible. That's been a lot of the picks this year they've gotten. They're really good at doing the tip drill stuff over there in the desert. And okay, I'll go with the really bold prediction. You want to hear my really bold prediction?
Yes. Of course.
Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren both go over 100 yards.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
I like it.
That's my bold prediction, and I just think that's the biggest reason the Steelers win this game is I have no idea how the Cardinals stop this run game.
Right. Yeah, it's already been cooking, and the Cardinals, you would think, are certainly not the team to slow it down. All right, Nick, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Farabaugh, FB, read stuff at SteelersNow.com, and make sure to subscribe to the Steelers Now YouTube channel for more.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit us in the comments with your predictions or anything that we talked about on here as well. Leave us a 5-star review if you were listening somewhere else other than on YouTube. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, for Nick Farabaugh and for myself. Enjoy the weekend. We will be back on Monday, myself and Alan Saunders, to talk about this game and get you ready for a short week with New England coming to town on Thursday as well. But until then, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.